is no God. Then why are we whispering?
Stand by to receive our transmission. Logic clearly dictates.
If you're an atheist, scream atheist!
I mean, but what is an atheist?
An atheist is someone who doesn't quite believe that there is somebody out there, some God out there.
Well, then to me, you're an idiot.
From beautiful downtown Philadelphia in the state of apostasy, and recorded for you from the piss-stained platform of a dank and stinky subway stop.
I'm in the dark here!
Somewhere on the rhetorical railway to psychological emancipation, it's the Atheist Underground. Boarding now and making all necessary stops in the Philadelphia metropolitan area. The fare is only $1, and you can pay the fare at patreon.com. Look for Atheist Underground.
I got no life!
The Atheist Underground is a public service from the Intellectual Transit Authority, moving your mind to places it was too weak to go by itself.
Welcome to the Underground. Next stop, Skepticsburg. Skepticsburg is next.
Welcome to the very first stop on the Atheist Underground Psychological Emancipation Railway. This is Skepticsburg. You have arrived. Many of these journeys begin in Skepticsburg, and this one is no exception. You all boarding here are the very first passengers aboard the railway, and we thank you for that. And you're all here because you're skeptics, first and foremost. And like most railways, it's all about the passengers. So we want to hear from you. And you can reach us easily on Twitter at Atheist Underground, or email us at atheistundergroundshow@gmail.com. I'm your conductor, the Irreverend Rob Moore. During today's stop, we'll introduce the new podcast. We'll also hear a funny, moving story about 4 residents of Skepticsburg as they describe their journeys through, over, and around religious influence. We'll witness the second coming of Weather Jesus. And before the train departs, we'll check the bulletin board of blasphemy. That's right, every station has one, like a kiosk, where people can post secular happenings from around the world. Right up there with a picture of a lost dog and some dude trying to sell his crappy amp. Now, you might know me from the Mythicist Milwaukee show, where for over 2 years we interviewed everybody in the secular movement, from Lawrence Krauss to the last comedian from the bottom of the D-list. At times the show was great, at times not so much, but I got into this to help lead a new civil rights movement. To create acceptance for and end the persecution of the most hated minority in America, the non-believer. Along with exposing the harm done by religion and fighting for secular rights, science and education and separation issues are what I want to talk about. And I want to have a show that reflects that, and also responds to the needs and wants of the actual community. I can tell you for sure we want to keep it short, sharp, and shocking. Equal parts satire, activism, and information. The show is produced by Craft, the Kenosha Racine Atheists and Free Thinkers. Find us on Facebook and meetup.com. And now, Atheist Underground presents the original story, The Skepticsburgers. What is it that leads a skeptic away from the comfort and conviction of faith so beloved by billions? Few manage to be born and raised completely secular. So how do more and more folk each day join the fast-growing ranks of the non-believers? We asked 4 different Skepticsburgers to describe their journeys. The highway to heathenism, it turns out, is littered with the remnants of religious sampling. Half-chewed mouthfuls of ministry, savored sincerely to start but spat on the street in the end, as merely unfulfilling for some, and gut-wrenchingly poisonous for others. Their stories are both hilarious and heartbreaking. But in order to understand how each arrived at atheism, it's useful to know what a skeptic hoped to get from religion in the first place.
I've always had my doubts my entire life.
Nick is 35 and a big fan of science and philosophy.
I was raised a Catholic. I never really bought into it.
Nick stuck with Catholicism right through catechism, the educative process leading up to a young person's confirmation into the church. But his parents were not insistent, so he gave Protestantism a try.
As a kid, I went to a Baptist church. I really liked video games, and I found that if I went to this church, the guy my brother went to church with would take me to the video game store and rent any game I want, so...
About the same age as Nick, Josephine is a librarian in a government facility.
My parents were pretty religious. They were Greek, so most residents of Greece are Greek Orthodox, which is a very traditional religion where the church services are very strict. There isn't any singing or enjoyment of services. I went to Greek church throughout middle school and high school. But when I went to college, I started exploring other faiths. So my sophomore year, I explored evangelicalism.
I love you, Jesus.
I remember just thinking that it was a big change from the Stoic services of the Greek Orthodox Church, where there was a rock band and singing and people laughing and enjoying services, and I tried to make female friends in the Bible study. So when I was a senior, I explored the Baha'i faith. And that's only because I went on online dating and I met a guy from Evanston who was Baha'i. He was really cute. And then after college, my brother actually converted to Mormonism. I admire my older brother, so I sometimes went to the Mormon church.
While Nick and Josephine's brushes with religion were largely social, Jacob and Ed were spiritual seekers.
I was 12 years old, and I started to really look into religion, and I decided I was going to read the entire Bible.
Jacob is a magician. Now in his 30s, he recalls a young life of curiosity and skepticism.
I started looking into religion because I felt like that was the real question. If there was a meaning to one's life, or if these things were true, it seems silly not to like put your full body into it. And I would just go to the library. So we go to the library and it'd be like I don't remember the exact number, but it's like 0. So there's like this whole section just of different religions, and I would just go and grab a book. And so sometimes it would be Native American rituals. Another time it would be, again, witchcraft or pagan or all the other religions out there, really.
Ed is a truck driver for a non-religious charity organization and tells a harrowing tale of sincere, desperate soul-searching.
The way I was raised religiously was not religious at all. I mean, I knew that my mother and her family were Mormons. As a family, we never went to church. I became a believer a little later on in life. I was about 22 years old. Like most things, relationship problems. I got in some legal trouble. Life just kept, punching me in the face. One day I was just walking and I saw an Assembly of God church. So I stopped in and I talked to a youth pastor there. And I was just kind of telling them kind of what was going on, and, I just felt that there was something missing in my life. I came back and, heard the sermon. I was kind of sitting in the back, and they did an altar call. And, the pastor was like, I know there's somebody's here that's really troubled. I know that, God spoke to me that, this young man is really looking for guidance. This young man is lost, and so on and so forth. And I'm telling you, man, it was like he was speaking to me. There was no doubt about it. And like a chill just kind of came over my body. There I was saved. I was saved right then and there.
For a time, religion provided direction, and Ed was hooked.
So I kept going deeper and deeper and deeper into it, so much so that I signed up for, being evangelist and learning how to, preach the gospel.
Although each skeptical mind had a different experience with religion, they were each of them compelled by their nature at some point to take a deeper look into what they had found.
So early on in Genesis, within the first 10 pages, there were some morally questionable things that happened. I think God references her as basically all women, that she is a slave of Adam, and then going on to the flood, which involved murdering everyone and drowning everyone.
When I was a teenager is when it really sunk in, and I actually read the Satanic Bible by Anton LaVey, which is a completely atheistic philosophy, and it just made a lot of sense to me.
I realized I was just enjoying it for the social aspect because I was trying to make friends at college rather than just have a belief system. So when I moved out of state, my first group of friends were the socialists. It was my first exposure to authors like Richard Dawkins or Greg Epstein.
We were like, hey, let's go out and experience other churches. Let's get a different mindset. This was the South. This was Texas. So we wanted to go listen to some Baptist preachers. We wanted to go listen to some other sides of it. So we sought it out. We went to one place. It was just this little hole in the wall church, and they were actually baptizing somebody in a horse trough. And in our church, it was this beautiful marble thing. But I still had all these questions.
It becomes clear that further study revealed few answers, instead raising many more questions. But was there a moment, or a specific incident, when skepticism converted to disbelief?
So I was going through confirmation at the time, and the person who ran it even said, asked everyone, do you believe in God? And I kind of shrugged my shoulders, and she says, you're not sure? And I said, yeah, I'm not sure. And she told me that was okay. And I kind of remember at the time thinking, that's not okay. So I was talking to a girl, and I was in middle school, so I was obviously trying to, see what I could pull off with girls that you do in middle school. And so she was very religious, it turned out. And as I talked to her, it came up. I don't remember exactly how it came up, but I said, oh, you believe in the Bible? And she said, yes. I said, so you believe that you should be my slave? And she's like, what are you talking about? And I gave her the passage. I said, let's just read the passage. And she read it, and she instantly, I could hear the book close and then the phone go dead. So then within 5, maybe 10 minutes, I get a phone call, and I pick it up, and she's just saying, hi, this is so-and-so's mother. She told me about your passage that you're talking about, and it actually means that Eve has to be faithful. Yeah. So it says that when God says in the Bible that he's a slave, it means that she has to be faithful to him. And she says, do you understand? And I said, yes, of course. And then I hung up, and I thought, well, why did it say faithful instead of slave?
But what about young Nick? No doubt the lure of free video games was enough to keep him in the flock.
He would take me there to rent a video game, but then he didn't like the video games I was renting. I'd rent Mortal Kombat, and it'd have a lot of blood in it. So he's like, well, I don't think I should be taking you to rent these games. So then he tried controlling the video games I was renting, so then I stopped going to church. I actually was molested as a kid, not by a Catholic priest or anything. If God is all loving and all powerful, then why do such immoral things happen? Why do such things happen to children?
But surely he'd heard the argument that God gives us all free will.
People have free will to act accordingly, but nonetheless, what about the free will of the children being molested? What about the free will of the woman being raped or the person being murdered? What about their free will? And so from then on, I've accepted myself as an atheist.
I found myself not enjoying the evangelical group anymore because I didn't enjoy the Bible study. I would be the one questioning the Bible study leader about why this is, and her answers were more about, oh, we take it on faith. I was just sort of exploring the religion just because a cute guy was interested in that. But I found myself wondering, is there a belief system? Like, am I ever going to have a belief in some sort of spirituality? Why do these religions even exist if they're just social?
In line with Ed's heartfelt foray into the misty forest of faith, the fall that followed was a terrifying tumble from the tallest tree, his head smacking violently every branch on the way down. He began to see inconsistencies in the message.
It was a fast rise, but a very slow fall. I remember that in the house we had shelves, and those shelves were labeled. My shelf was always empty, and their shelves were always full. They're telling you about how it's a brotherhood and how Christ-like that you have to be. And to me, that didn't make sense. Well, why would Christ put labels on his shelves? And I talked to the pastor about it. He goes, well, you know, faith without deeds is dead. You know, you still have to work. Give unto Caesar what is Caesar. Give unto God what is God. So they always seem to use the Bible as a counter argument to, I thought was a legitimate point about Christianity. Why are their names on the shelves then? What does it matter? What does it matter if this person went out and bought 2 cans of beans? That other can of beans should be for his brothers, shouldn't it? Being involved and so closely involved in the church, you can kind of see the business aspect of it. I didn't know what kind of money they took in, but I helped collect.
Several incongruences stood out, but one story in particular carries great emotional weight and began with a request from one of Ed's churchmates.
Ed, why don't you tell your story? Because, you're in jail, and hopefully, we can bring him to our side, so to speak. But we think he's gay, and that was a big thing. We think he's gay, and being gay, you're that you're just not. So if he is gay, if he comes to Christ, then maybe he won't be gay. And then I remember at the end of it, the young man come up and asked me, if he could talk to me in private, and I was like, sure, that's fine. And I got to tell you, I'm pretty sure he was gay. I mean, he just, But the thing that strikes out is just my feeling about that was, I didn't know this young man, but I just remember being repulsed, and I'm really ashamed of that now. I was worried for him, and and I asked him. I said, "Well, are you gay?" And he goes, "No, I'm not gay." But I just felt he was. My gaydar went off. And I remember after our talk, he hugged me, and I was repulsed by it, and I felt really fucking horrible about that. I wish I could, meet him and tell him how sorry I was that. That it was like that. But that came from religion. It didn't come from my parents.
But Ed wasn't quite finished yet. He had one last thing he wanted to achieve through his faith.
Because I always struggled with cigarette smoking. I always felt, that was my one vice, and I was always ashamed of that being a Christian. It's just like, why can't God take this from me? That's the one thing I felt that always kept me grounded to earth, and I didn't want that. I wanted to be walking in the footsteps of Jesus. I remembered that we were going to have this dynamic preacher. He's power. Man, God moves through this guy. And we were thinking, or at least I was thinking, like this guy's going to melt my brain. the day comes where he's in there and the church is just loaded. We just had a ton of people. It was almost like Easter. And this guy, man, I'm telling you, when he preached, whew, and then, then he called for, people to come up, and I'm waiting in line and I'm like praying and all that other stuff. And then it comes to my turn and he puts his hand on my head and it was nothing. Absolutely nothing. I felt nothing. I just ran out of that church. It's been so long. Just cried. Just, why aren't you doing this for me? I'm not a perfect Christian, but I'm not supposed to be. I'm working on it. Why can't you take this? And it hurt. It really hurt. And then just kind of after that, I just started drifting away. Slowly and slowly, I drifted away. I drifted away from all my friends.
Mindful of the now famous 2014 Pew Research study that identified atheists as the most despised minority in America, we asked each skeptic how coming out has affected their life.
I had it because I work with in education and with a variety of organizations, and sometimes even church organizations. And so it's the norm to be Christian, so they assume you're Christian until they have a reason to question it. And so it's really easy to fake it without having to necessarily lie or say anything.
Most of my friends are atheists, and any friends that I have who are theists, they haven't ever treated me differently, thankfully. I've been very fortunate in that respect.
I am not able to come out openly. My dad knows, and I think he just thinks it's funny, like it's another phase of my life. Like, oh, you have another boy in your life, ho, 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 or something like that. I also do have to keep it very close to me professionally.
I don't hide the fact that I'm an atheist. I actually wear it on my sleeve. On my Jeep, I have a Thinking Atheist thing. I have a little Atheist A on my work truck.
Ed is affected the opposite way, where he's not necessarily persecuted for non-belief, but he feels subjected to inappropriate religious influence in the workplace.
But it just really bothers me personally when we start out a meeting like God is good, and I completely and totally disagree. I've come really close to calling human resources, but it scares me. I'm not going to lie to you. It does scare me. I've never came out and told him that I was an atheist. We've never had that conversation, but I wouldn't be afraid to. But I would be afraid, not that I would lose my job, that I might be looked at differently.
Of course, a removal from the ranks of religion is not the same as an embrace of atheism. So what do our Skepticsburgers get from joining the secular movement, not provided by mere apathy?
I might get to meet Johnny Depp, because everyone loves Johnny Depp. Even religious people love Johnny Depp. He's said to be the big speaker at an event called the Reason Rally. Sort of a rally for people who are non-religious. So I use that term a lot with my staff. You can have a belief in what's going on down here on Earth.
I'm more open to evidence and information than, say, a theist would. I know people who, to this day, deny evolution. That's a very, very fundamental scientific fact. It really changes your way of thinking and being open to new evidence.
Part of me wants to tell people, hey, what you believe is a fairy tale. It's like if your friend believed in, like, Harry Potter was true, you kind of want to, correct that. So finding a community helped in the sense of being like, it's okay to do that. Also hearing other people's stories and how much they share with other people, it sort of inspires me to know kind of like where I should be. Just recently I found a local actual meet space. I'm excited to that because then I can actually talk with people face to face as opposed to doing it all online. So activism's nice in that sense of specifically church and state separation. I shouldn't have to worry as much being an atheist or especially since I think if I was Jewish or Muslim, I would actually probably get less, even though Christians have most American Christians have stigmas towards those groups. I feel like somehow not believing anything is worse to them than anything. And I don't understand why, and I feel like that I would like to see that change.
So just starting to be involved in the community, it's been a wonderful ride. At first I was a little bit more of a firebrand atheist, I think, but I think recently I've just kind of pulled back from that, and I think I'm really still trying to find my place in the community. I mean, so moving forward, I've looked up videos, and I embrace LGBTQ. And then finally kind of bringing me to what led me to Swift was seeing Milwaukee, the billboard that they placed up, and then finally getting the courage to come to one of their meetings. And they're always very welcome. And
large-scale atrocities like fundamentalist terrorism and genocide, or church-complicit pedophilia rings, take center stage in this age of sensationalism, as well they should. But it's easy to lose sight of the more intimate, personal tragedies. The creative minds crippled by guilt and fear, one woman's search for community, one man's struggle for meaning, or any individual's sense that one is part of something larger. Skeptics, too, are tempted by the promise of religion. And when that hallowed promise then is proved completely hollow, reactions widely range. From derision, dismissiveness, and disappointment to downright devastation. And while it might be easier for some skeptics to accept the obvious shortcomings of faith, for every one who escaped unscathed, there is another who bears real emotional scars. So, in the end, was it worth it?
Man, I'm really glad I lived those experiences. I still wish I could find that young man, but hopefully. He's an atheist too, and that's what I'm hoping for.
It's time for Weather Jesus, the meteorological mashup that delivers a weather report from around the globe. And asks a local, Weather Jesus has returned. Now here's Atheist Underground's own Weather Jesus, Stormy Joe.
Thanks, Rob. I'm in Jerusalem, the odds-on favorite for the second coming of Christ. Today's Weather Jesus is street vendor Farouk al-Farouk. How are you, Farouk?
Hello, you like a date?
Excuse me?
Hookah, you like a date?
No, I'm not a hooker. I'm married. I don't want a date.
Not a date. I have dates, figs, olives, very fresh, and hookah to smoke. Come to my booth.
Thank you, no. We're here to ask whether Jesus has come back to Jerusalem. Try to focus.
Ah, Jesus, yes. Very sorry. I am ready.
Any sign of Jesus' return?
No Jesus today. Sorry. How about a nice date instead?
Any sign of the rapture at all? The apocalypse?
No. Listen, why would Jesus come back? You know they killed him last time he was here, right?
Well, yes.
And not nice like with a nice easy beheading like Farouk would do. No. They kill him ugly. No, he's never coming back. It's crazy talk.
Alrighty then, how about the weather?
Huh?
The weather. What's the extended forecast?
Hot and dry all week. It's a fucking desert here. What do you think?
There you have it from Jerusalem. No Jesus, hot and dry all week. This has been Stormy Joe reporting live for AU's Weather Jesus.
Here now with Secular News and Events is Jojo Vandescoop.
In Christiansburg, Virginia, the Parks and Recreation Department canceled a trip offered for city residents to the Ark Encounter and Creation Museum this spring. The Freedom from Religion Foundation sent a letter to the department indicating that offering a field trip to the religiously based institute would violate the Constitution and would constitute government endorsement of religion. In Panama City, Florida, Merritt Brown Middle School teacher Susan Kramer is being investigated for social media messages that were posted to a closed, I repeat, closed, Facebook group for the Atheists of Bay County. In the posts, Ms. Kramer vented about frustrations over students inviting her to church and students yelling "God bless you" when someone sneezed in class. The Atheists of Bay County Facebook page is closed to members only, and the teacher did not mention any names of students or the school she worked in for the post. The school district has not yet initiated any disciplinary or termination action against Ms. Kramer, but a district spokesperson did say that it is against school policy to criticize students on the internet. In Kazakhstan, 66-year-old human rights advocate and atheist writer Alexander Kharlamov is facing new charges for his writings on religion and beliefs, this time for a book published in 2014. Investigators in East Kazakhstan region claim the book incites, quote, religious discord and hatred, unquote. They confiscated 78 copies of his book in a February 2nd raid on his home in Ritter. If convicted, Kharlamov faces 2 to 7 years imprisonment. In event news, Free Thought Festival 6 will be held at Symphony Hall, 770 West Dayton Street in Madison, Wisconsin, on the University of Wisconsin-Madison campus. It is a free event open to the public and will be held March 3rd and 4th. The event is hosted by the Atheists, Humanists, and Agnostics of UW-Madison and is sponsored by the Freedom from Religion Foundation, Secular Student Alliance, and the Center for Inquiry. The headline speaker will be American sexologist and host of the YouTube channel Sexplanations, Dr. Lindsay Doe. Other speakers include atheist blogger Greta Christina, performer Bronston Jones, and J.T. Snipes, campus assessment manager of the Interfaith Youth Corps.
The Intellectual Transit Authority thanks you for riding the Atheist Underground. This has been Skepticsburg. Mind the gap, and look for the next stop, New Evidence. New Evidence is next.